This is Comp's History. Question 1. Compare and contrast the attributes of the British model of higher education with those of the German model. Which of the two models was used first in American higher education and why? The American higher education was influenced by both the British and German models of education. While both models contributed to the overall evolution of the American higher education system, they were vastly different in their individual approaches to education. The American higher education system was first influenced by the British model. This influence is primarily based on educational characteristics of Europe, specifically England, and the establishment of the first colonies in America. This model was more residential in loco parentis, and the goal was to educate and teach future church and state leaders. The teachings were from classic texts with foundations in Christianity, logic, grammar, and rhetoric, music, and arithmetic. This influence is reminiscent of a liberal arts curriculum. The faculty under the British model was mostly tutors, waiting to become ministers or state leaders. Additionally, the British model of higher education stressed strict discipline and structure and adherence to rules. Since the British model was more residential, the faculty served as both tutor and disciplinarian for the young male students attending the schools. As the American higher education evolved, the German model of higher education began to influence American higher education. The German model allowed more freedom of thought than the British model, and the goal of the model was to produce the highest form of knowledge. The teachings under the German model placed emphasis on advanced arithmetic, scientific methods, and the hard sciences. Additionally, the education and enhancement of society was important in the German model. This model is reminiscent of curriculums that lead to specialized degrees. The faculty under the German model tended to be specialized instructors in those fields. Both models have influenced American higher education. The British model laid the foundation for residential institutions and liberal arts institutions, while the German model laid the foundation for research institutions, graduate programs, and specialized degrees. In their emulation of German research and scholarship, however, American universities have not lost their allegiance to British concepts of liberal learning, undergraduate education, academic governance, and collegiate organization. Student protest in the 1960s and the demise of in loco parentis did not displace the countless student services and organized activities that American universities lavishly provide their students. And departmentalized colleges continue to be the organizational structure under which faculty members are appointed to teach and in which students enroll for degree programs. Question number 2. What landmark reforms and legislation occurred in American higher education? How did they shape American higher education and change the relationship between institutions and the government? The Morrill Act of 1862 was also known as the Land-Grant College Act. It was a major boost to higher education in America. The grant was originally set up to establish institutions in each state that would educate people in agriculture, home economics, mechanical arts, and other professions that were practical at the time. The Land Grant Act was introduced by a congressman from Vermont named Justin Smith Morrill. He envisioned the financing of agricultural and mechanical education. He wanted to assure that education would be available to those in all social classes. There were several of these grants, but the first passed in 1862. This bill was signed by Abraham Lincoln on July 2nd. This gave each state 30,000 acres of public land for each senator and representative. These numbers were based on the census of 1860. The land was then to be sold, and the money from the sale of that land was to be put in an endowment fund, which would provide support for the colleges in each of the states. The land grant has improved the lives of millions of Americans. This was not the case in the early stages. At the time the grants were established, there was a separation of races. In the South, blacks were not allowed to attend the original land grant institutions. There was a provision for separate but equal facilities, but only Mississippi and Kentucky set up any such institution. This situation was rectified when the Second Morrill Act was passed in 1890 and expanded the system of grants to include black institutions. The Morrill Acts have become a major educational resource for our nation. This program is available to all people who are in search of higher education. Over the years, it has proven to be an important part of our educational system. This act changed the course of higher education. The purpose of education shifted from the classical studies and allowed for more applied studies that would prepare the students for the world that they would face once leaving the classroom. This act also gave education support directly from the government. The Morrill Act changed the face of education and made room for our growing and ever-changing country, and ensured that there would always be money to finance educational facilities and that there would be continual government support of these institutions. Question number 3, curriculum development and higher education. The beginning of American higher education system modeled its early curricula after the ecclesiastical model of medieval universities popular at Oxford and Cambridge. As the headmaster of such models was a member of the Roman Catholic Church's clergy, and the primary goal of the institutions was religious study. The early curriculum was theologically based. However, by the late 1780s, American institutions began to amend their course offerings and began to shape curricula we recognize today. New scientific advances required universities to begin offering courses in applied science, agriculture, law, and education teaching, in addition to their theological foundations. By 1893, institutions had incorporated the 4 recommended courses of study: classical, Latin scientific, modern languages, and English. A few years later, in 1906, the Douglas Commission brought on the need to expand the curricula of higher education further by incorporating vocational education programming as well. Just after World War I, there was a call for universal education, a practical education for the masses, or a liberal education for the few. History, civics, and sociology became groups into the social sciences and natural history, including fields of biology and general science. By the late 1920s, there was an explosion of curriculum development projects, one of the most popular being activity analysis, a curriculum design based on research of what real-world people were doing. Method cults emerged, all claiming to have the magic method for making all classes want and able to learn. By the end of the progressive era, America is edging closer to a commitment to mass higher education. In the 1930s, the Progressive Educational Association, or PEA, conducts an 8-year study of what would be taught in high schools to prepare college, and 300 colleges and universities waived the standard entrance requirements to test the PEA theories. The new program focused on greater mastery of learning, application of the knowledge, increased creativity, better individual guidance, and better teaching and materials. While not creating a significant difference, those students seem to make better grades, earn more scholastic honors, and engage in more extracurricular activities. The first national curriculum development, however, occurred after the Russian launch of the Sputnik satellite. Fear that the Russians were winning the space race caused the nation to focus heavily on math and science fields, maintaining that the curriculum should provide an understanding of the fundamental principles of the subject. Experiential discovery learning became a major part of the new curriculum. The American college system has evolved into a provider of rich, relevant training for all adults. Diversity in the curriculum, the student body, and teaching methods has transformed higher education into a flexible resource for students at any stage of life. What lies ahead? The post-industrial university will use rapidly maturing information technologies to build upon the timeless values of scholarship, collegiality, open dialogue, and intellectual integrity. Instruction will become more creative and dynamic as college educators design new educational formats to engage an increasingly diverse population of learners. Question number 4. Community college development in the U.S. Community junior college development in the U.S. began in the late 1890s. By 1901, it had established the Joliet Junior College, which is still in existence today. However, it is Congressman Anthony Caminetti of California who is considered the father of the community college after he authors a bill permitting the offering of public junior college courses in 1907. The bill was an extension of his own bill 20 years earlier, establishing high schools as extensions of grammar schools and outlined the origins of the junior college. 1. An upper extension of existing high schools, originally small 4-year institutions that reverted to 2-year programs, funded through the efforts of local philanthropy, and an evolution of institutions originally designed to teach rural youth. In the 1920s, the American Association of Junior Colleges was founded. By 1925, it was expanded to include community and vocational education in an effort to qualify for state and federal vocational funding. Junior and community colleges experienced explosive growth between 1900 and 1930, mostly through the founding of private institutions. The primary purpose of community colleges was to provide a liberal arts core education with the possibility of then transferring to a more traditional 4-year education. Transferring to a more traditional 4-year institution to complete their bachelor's degree. Over time, community colleges have amended their overall purposes to serve the nation's needs during major societal changes. For example, during the Depression of the 1930s, many community colleges offered vocational and job training programs in an effort to alleviate staggering unemployment rates. Upon the created GI Bill after World War I, the demand for higher education options increased exponentially, and community colleges were able to step in to offer both academic and vocational options to returning servicemen. This increased demand and led President Truman to establish a network of community colleges in 1948. A national network was finally achieved in the 1960s when the baby boomer generation boosted enrollment numbers, causing a second boom in the establishment of institutions. Community and junior colleges serve an important purpose in the American higher education system, especially today in an era of ever-increasing tuition rates and ever-decreasing funding opportunities. Local two-year institutions allow traditional students a more affordable way to begin their college careers, many saving money through lower tuition rates and with the ability to continue living at home by attending an institution in their community. Additionally, community colleges allow individuals to obtain associate's degrees, vocational certifications, technical and professional training, and other benefits of higher education for careers that may not necessarily require bachelor's or advanced degrees. Many community colleges also offer continuing and adult education, helping these individuals who did not complete high school to obtain a diploma to move forward with their educational and professional lives. CCs often require more than 60 credits to meet academic program requirements for an associate's degree. Most four-year institutions now stick to the standard of 120 credit hours for a bachelor's degree. In the fall of 2011, 13 million students were enrolled at community colleges across the country, and 45% of all undergraduates in the United States were enrolled at community colleges in the fall of 2012.